Hello, everyone. I'm Harvey Brownstone, and today our guest is the author of an unusual book that caught my attention not only because of its title, but because of its empowering message of personal growth and transformation. The book is entitled The Unlucky Sperm Club. You are not a victim of your circumstances, but a product of your choices. The author was born with a family history plagued with murder, rape allegations, domestic violence, and child abuse, and that legacy haunted him throughout his youth. He overcame many obstacles to become a highly successful businessman, and now is the founder and CEO of igotsmarter, a goal achievement program created to help people succeed in every aspect of their lives. I'm pleased to welcome Nelson Tressler to our show. Nelson, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Harvey. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Nelson, tell us why you consider yourself to be a member of the Unlucky Sperm Club.
Yeah. Well, my mom became pregnant with me when she was 15 years old. And while she was pregnant with me, her father, who was the local trash collector in a small town, drove into the town square. There he spotted two police officers. He stuck a gun out the window and opened fire on those police officers, killing one and critically wounding another. And eventually, my grandfather was captured and brought to stand trial for what he had done, where he was facing the death penalty. And during my grandfather's trial, my mom got up and testified to the jury that the reason that her father had shot and killed that police officer was that the police officer had raped her, and she was now pregnant with his baby, who was me. And my mom's testimony worked. My grandfather's first trial ended in a hung jury. They did try him again, but the state, because of my mom's testimony, took the death penalty off the table. He was eventually found guilty and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, where he ended up spending the rest of his life, more than 40 years behind bars, leaving behind in this small town his family of 15 children, including my mom and now me, to deal with the circumstances of what he had done. Believe it or not, my life didn't get any easier from that point on. My mom, I'm born to a 15-year-old mother. Eventually, my mom meets a man who would become my stepfather. And we quickly came to find out that he was an alcoholic, very physically and emotionally abusive to me and my mom almost on a daily basis. Eventually they have 4 children in quick succession. And because of the lifestyle that they're living, a lot of the basic needs of my siblings fall upon me as the oldest. And that includes, bottle feeding, diaper changing, even waking up in the middle of the night to take care of babies. And because of this, my mom, would rather me stay home from school and help her with the babies as opposed to go to school. And I remember my 4th grade year, the last day of school, you're excited to see who you're going to have for 5th grade. And I remember going in there and looking down at my report card and realizing that I had straight Fs and that I would be repeating the 4th grade because I'd missed probably 60 days of school that year. And that's kind of the way my life went until one day my stepfather was walking home drunk from a bar. There was somebody else driving home drunk from that bar, and they ended up hitting and killing him. And, here's my mom. She has 5 small children. She's never worked outside of the home. She's dropped out of school in the 8th grade. And as hard as her life has been to this point, she cannot wrap her mind around how she's going to care for 5 small children. And it's at this time that she decides she's going to take her own life. And my mom attempts suicide. And fortunately, she was not successful. But when she did get out of the hospital, my family ended up getting split up from that point forward. And I went to go live with my grandmother, who was the wife of the man who shot and killed the police officer.
So, needless to say, a member of the Unlucky Sperm Club is someone born into unfortunate circumstances such as poverty, disability, abuse, or neglect that negatively affects one's chances for social and economic upward mobility. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's very fair. I mean, some of us may have heard of the Lucky Sperm Club, which Warren Buffett kind of coined as people who are born into privilege and have every opportunity to succeed. And that's kind of where I came up with the title of the Unlucky Sperm Club, because of the circumstances that I was born under. And if you ask anybody, where I was going to end up when I was growing up, chances are they did not have a favorable outlook on my life because of my circumstances.
So, Nelson, what inspired you to write the book?
As I said here today, I just told you the story about my youth, but as I said here today, my life couldn't be any more polar opposite. I ended up becoming the first person in my family to get a college degree. It took me, I have dyslexia, so it was a very hard, long, drawn out process. It took me 4 different schools. It took me 12 years. It took me joining the Air Force to get money to go to school, but I did become that first person to graduate from college. And then after that, I became very successful in business and became the top salesman worldwide for a top 5 commercial real estate firm, which I worked at for 20 years. I was able to start more than 10 businesses, including one of the largest privately held pet resorts in the country. And as I exited those businesses and retired from real estate, I was kind of left with, okay, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? I mean, it's not in me to put my feet up and watch the waves crash in. And I started to reflect upon the life that I had lived, and specifically, my childhood. And prior to this point, nobody knew about my childhood. I had moved away from that small town to Las Vegas, and the only person that I ever told was my wife about the circumstances of my birth, because I figured she deserved to know. But I never told my kids. I never told my in-laws or my friends. But I started to reflect upon that, and I thought, you know what? I had lived that life, and I had overcome it, and I owed it to the world to share that story. And it was very hard in the beginning. I had to tell that story in the third person because it was so painful. And eventually I got to the point where I could share it. But I want to get that message out there so that other people who are born in unfavorable, and I'll put that in quotes, circumstances, know that it's possible. The subtitle of my book is "You Are Not a Victim of Your Circumstances, but a Product of Your Choices." And I want everybody to understand that and to know that you choose where you end up. It doesn't matter where you're born. It doesn't matter what circumstances you're born in. You get to choose where you end up. And that was what I was able to do. And I wanted to share that message with the world.
Nelson, you've said that growing up, you were seen as an outcast in your community, and you also had to deal with an extremely abusive and alcoholic stepfather. You wrote that your formative years taught you many lessons and forced you to create the luck that you have today. What were the most important lessons you learned from your childhood?
Yeah, I mean, one of the lessons I learned was to be resourceful. I mean, we were very poor, no food in the refrigerator poor. And, it was a crapshoot whether or not the lights would turn on or having heat in the winter. And that was one of the things my mom taught me, was to be resourceful. And to this day, I understand that, not having the resources is not the problem, but being resourceful is the issue, no matter where you find yourself. So I think that helped me throughout my life, is just to figure out how to be resourceful and how to get things done. Gratitude. As I sit on the other side of where I started, I'm so grateful. And there's not very many things that scare me, but the one thing that does scare me is if I wouldn't have pursued that first goal of becoming the first person in my family to get a college degree, that I would have forfeited this life. And the life that I'm living now, I literally have to pinch myself some days to say, holy crap, here I am living this life. And I could have never imagined it. And I have had great success in business and those type of things. But, I've been married for 25 years. I've got 3 very productive sons who are living a drastically different life than I was living. And I'm just so blessed and have so much gratitude and so thankful for the life that I'm living. And those are the lessons that I've kind of learned from being born in that circumstances and being able to work my way out of it.
I find it so interesting that many of the world's most successful people had horrible and traumatic childhoods, What do you think is the key to overcoming a difficult past and making it really big?
Seeing the potential that lies within each and every one of us. I mean, I think there is so much potential in all of us. All of us have particular gifts and talents. The problem I think with a lot of people is that they don't see that potential. They don't see what they're capable of. And when I was able to graduate from college, it just blew me away because no one else in my family, of my mom's brothers and sisters, only two had ever graduated from high school. None had even attended a college. And the fact that I was able to do that, I kind of took a step back and like, man, I've got some potential in here. I can do hard things. And, that's when I really brought goals and personal development into my life and became literally obsessed with those on what I could accomplish. And I saw that potential. And after seeing that potential, I was never willing to live that average life again, or even below average life that I had been living. So I think the number one thing is to realize how much potential each and every one of us have within us, and to recognize that, because sometimes we go through stretches of our lives where it doesn't feel like we have any potential. And that's not the case, and that's not true.
Nelson, your book resonated with me not because I'm a member of the Unlucky Sperm Club. In fact, quite the opposite. I had wonderful parents and an upper middle class childhood, but when I told my parents I was gay when I was 19, they threw me out, and I ended up on welfare for 5 years. And I had to get myself through university and law school. And I thought the lessons in your book were equally applicable to my situation as to yours.
Yeah, and I agree. And being born in a tough situation is one thing, but I think the book will resonate with anybody who has found themselves or finds themselves now in tough circumstances, because the message of the book is that you're not a victim of those circumstances, that you're a product of your choices. And just like you had to do, once you were out on your own, you had to become a product of your choices. There was no more help. There was no more, woe is me. You didn't fall into that victim mindset, which I think is really an epidemic right now in our society. But you went along and you understood that you were in control. And I think that's one of the best lessons of this book, is that you are in control. You are exactly where you choose to be. And if you don't like where you are right now, then you need to choose to be somewhere else. And the way that you do that is by making different choices.
When you were a kid, did you understand that your life was more difficult than other people's? By that, I mean, did you have friends from school who took you to their homes so you could see the contrast in how other people lived?
Yeah, absolutely. I tell the story in the book about my first pick up date. I asked this girl, I was so nervous, and, she was one of the popular kids in school, came from a great family. And, I had a crush on her, and I asked her to the 8th grade dance, which was the first dance that you would actually pick your date up from. And my mom, she, I don't know if she had a car at this time. I was living with my gram. She didn't drive. And I ended up having my cousin chauffeur us there. And when I got to the house, it was a very icy situation. I could tell that the family kind of knew who I was, and was not real privy on their daughter going with us. And then they asked that question, like, who's taking you to the dance? And I'm like, oh, my cousin John, who was a senior in high school, I think, at the time. And boy, it got really icy cold. And my date was back getting ready, and the parents excused themselves to go see how she was doing. And then they came back out, and they're like, oh, yeah, by the way, we're going to have to pick, my date up a half an hour early because they had some family situation that they had to go to. And I'm like, that's fine. You know what? We can bring her back early. And they're like, no, it's on the way. And anyhow, I ended up dating this girl. And eventually they told me that they weren't going to let their daughter go with me because they had known who I was. And when they found out that my cousin was chauffeuring us, they thought that we were going to pull off the road and rape them. So come to find out, they followed us to the dance to make sure that we got to the dance okay. And then they had made up that story about picking her up because they didn't want her to drive home with us. But I mean, as far as an example, I ended up dating that girl all through high school, and her family, was that nuclear family. The dad wasn't an alcoholic. The dad wouldn't dream of hitting, his kids or his wife. And there was always food in the refrigerator. And I remember thinking to myself, this is the type of family that I want to have. I want to have where kids aren't afraid that their dad's going to come home and beat them or their mom. And there was always food there. And that kind of gave me that model of what I wanted to eventually have when I started my own family.
Isn't it true that luck or destiny play a big part in our lives as well? I mean, in your case, your life was changed for the better when your stepfather was killed by a drunk driver, and that gave you more stability when you went to live with your grandmother. And then your mother finally met a really good man who gave her a good life. All of that was just good luck, wasn't it?
You know what? What is luck? I talk about that in my book, Addition by Subtraction. You got to get some bad things out of your life sometimes in order to have the good things come. And that was absolutely the case with my stepfather being hit and killed by that drunk driver. But yeah, I mean, can you look at things and see that they're lucky or you were fortunate or blessed that those type of things happen? Absolutely. I mean, I look back all the time, and some of those things, they change the direction of your life forever. That situation changed it. I mean, when you meet somebody that can change your life. So, I mean, the one thing that would tell me is how important our choices are, because every single choice has a consequence. And I think some of us make choices and don't really evaluate what those, consequences are going to be after those choices. So yeah, I believe a little bit in luck and blessings and all those things. And I definitely believe that there's consequences to all of that.
Do you believe in destiny?
You know what? I believe we have choices. Do I think that our life is already all planned out for us and it's going to happen no matter what? I don't think I believe in that. I believe that we have free agency, that we get to choose the life that we live. And the way that we do that is by making those choices. And is it our destiny if I go out there and choose to get addicted to drugs or choose to do something that's horrible and then the consequences that flow from that? I don't think it's my destiny to do that. I think it's my choice. I think I have free agency, and I think all of us do. And I think we're going to end up exactly where we choose to be.
Well, people born into the Unlucky Sperm Club can often be envious or jealous of people who were born into privilege with a silver spoon in their mouth. But I have found that people born into privilege don't necessarily have an easy life, and some of them have even bigger problems than you had.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was one of the kind of spins on this book, is as I looked at those people who are born into privilege, and you always see them on the cover of the tabloids or whatever, these people who are born there, and then all of a sudden, they're into drug addiction or alcoholism, and they live these horrible lives because everything was given to them. And that's why I want to put quotes in the Unlucky Sperm Club, because I think if you're born under tough circumstances, you have that appreciation for how blessed you are and how hard life can be. And it gives you that contrast. I think one of the best gifts and blessings of being born in some tough circumstances is that contrast. You know what it's like to have it hard. And, I try to convey that to my children is, what? They're kind of born in under great circumstances, and I keep trying to teach them those lessons that, hey, this isn't the way life always is. It can be harder. And I try to tell them some of my stories, and of course they've read my book and definitely have more of an appreciation. But I think the Unlucky Sperm Club is the lucky sperm club because of the circumstances you're born under. And just like you said, a lot of the most successful people in the world were born in some very trying circumstances. And I don't think that's a coincidence.
Nelson, you had a big brother when you were a child. Tell us about the impact on your life of having a big brother.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to just think of lucky, I actually had two big brothers. The first one showed up took me to play video games for a half an hour and then brought me home and never heard from him again. So I'm not sure if he just wanted to throw that on a resume or not. And because of that, I got another big brother, and he changed my life forever, took me under his wing, again, showed me the way life could be and asked me some questions about what I wanted with my life and where I wanted to end up and what I wanted to do. And he was attending Penn State University, which I grew up, a few miles away. He had to join the Navy to finish up school. And eventually, because of the example that he has showed to me, I joined the military as well on the GI Bill to finish up school. And I still have a great relationship today with my big brother and his wife and his family. 40 years later, we get together, every year and go hike a national park or hang out. But yeah, it was a huge shift in my life. It gave me that positive male role model that I didn't have growing up. And it gave me, again, another just great example of who I wanted to be whenever I had that opportunity to become a husband and a father and a mentor.
Nelson, I was really taken by your discussion of the crab mentality that seems to happen in many families. Your goal was to be the first person in your family to go to college. And instead of encouraging and supporting you, many of your relatives ridiculed you and tried to pull you back down to their level, just like crabs in a bucket. Why do you think that happens?
You know what? There's two ways to have the tallest building in town. One is to work hard and build the building yourself. And the second is to tear every other building down that's taller than yours. And I think a lot of people do that. And, I've read things like, if you see a stranger who wins, the lotto, you're like happy for them and wishing them the best. But if somebody in your family, someone close to you wins the lotto, I think there's some enviness that builds up there. And that was the case in my life early on when I was doing things that no one else in that family had done, like go to college and doing those type of things. But when I released my book, I was shocked that a few of my cousins, I come from a very large family, a few of my cousins lashed out on me on social media and called me a liar and did all these things. And, I was just blown away because I had a great relationship with everybody in my family up to that point. And then, 3 or 4 of them got on social media and just bashed me and called me all kinds of things. And it was very hurtful, but I understood why it was because of this crab mentality. And you know what? I forgive them. And, I kind of feel bad for them because I know where it's coming from. You'll never see somebody who's doing better than you trying to tear you down. It's always those people who are really looking up to you and are envious of you that want to tear you down. And it's just something in our mentality that some people kind of go that way when they feel like somebody maybe is overshadowing them. So it's unfortunate, but I think a lot of us deal with that as we have some sort of success in our lives.
Yes, I agree. I've certainly experienced it. You joined the Air Force at the age of 20 and served in Saudi Arabia and Turkey. What life lessons did you learn from that experience?
Yeah, it was incredible. To go over to the first time I was, ever out of the country, and to see some of the cultures and how other people lived in different places in the world blew me away, especially, Saudi Arabia, where, women aren't allowed to drive and they were dressed in, the scarves and couldn't show any part of their bodies except their eyes and their hands. And, I really appreciated America after that and all the opportunities that America affords people. I mean, here I was, here I am sitting today, coming from where I came from to have been able to reach where I've reached, professionally and with my family. And you know what? There's very few countries that you can do that in short of the US. And it really made me appreciate the country that we're in. Is this country perfect? No, it's not. Do we have issues that we need to work on? Absolutely. But I personally wouldn't trade this country for any other country, especially, even now, as I've been able to travel the world a little bit more and see other countries. I'm just so grateful to have been born in this country and to be able to live in this country, to where you can be as successful as you want to be, no matter what your last name is and no matter what circumstances you were born under.
You wrote about the terrible time you had during the global financial crisis of 2008, when your businesses and livelihood were in severe jeopardy. You must have learned a lot of lessons from that experience too.
Yeah, absolutely. It was the first recession that I had gone through as an adult. And up to that point, I was in commercial real estate. I was doing very well, top salesman in the world for a top 5 commercial real estate firm. And I just thought that was the way it was supposed to be. And I started to invest in businesses and real estate. And all of a sudden, 2008 came and the financial crisis. And by this time, I was running a chain of children's daycares that I had to take over because my operations partner embezzled $1 million from me and my father-in-law. And we were about to lose the business, and my father-in-law was going through kidney failure and was having to retire from dentistry, and pretty much had all of his retirement savings invested in this business. I was in this without really any idea how to run businesses, but I figured it out. But 3 to 4 years into it, the financial crisis hits, and just struggling to get it. But the one thing that I did learn is you can't quit. No matter how dire the circumstances look, the only way that you can fail in anything, for that matter, is if you quit. And if you just keep going and keep plugging along and keep doing your best, eventually you're going to be able to make it out of it. And fortunately for me, I was able to make it out of that very, very trying circumstances.
When I read your book, I was surprised at what a risk taker you were as a businessman. You invested in daycare centers and pet resorts without any experience in either business. Didn't that take a lot of guts?
You know what? I'm a deal maker. And, I felt like, as I was living this life that I was living, I look back at the life that I had lived, and I'm like, what's the worst that can happen? Like, I'm never going to go back to as bad as things were. So I was willing, I think, to roll the dice a little more than somebody maybe hanging on and being super concerned about losing things. And that really never crossed my mind, because I knew where I'd come from. I had come from less than nothing, so I was willing to get out there and risk it. And I also saw the potential in myself. And I also saw that you can't fail unless you quit. And I'm willing to work as hard as it takes to succeed. And, I'm still able to do that today and willing to do that today. So if you're willing to work hard and you evaluate the risk, I mean, you can't be just throw things haphazard in the air and hope that things are going to make it. I mean, I evaluated the businesses that I got in. I saw the potential. I saw what I was going to be able to do for those businesses, and I was willing to take that risk. And fortunately, it paid off.
You wrote that you've never been a details guy. You're a big picture guy. How does a big picture guy succeed in business?
You know what? I think the blessing in being a big picture guy is I had my hand in so many things, businesses and real estate, brokerage and real estate development and all those things. And because I was so busy and because I was in so many other things, I never became a micromanager. I was always willing to hire great people who I trusted, who I hired, convinced that they could do the job. And then I was willing to let them do the job. I didn't have to get my hands in there. I told them what we wanted to accomplish. I gave my opinion. But after that, almost by necessity, I had to take a step back and start focusing on other things. And because of that, those people that I worked with were able to help me, build some of these great businesses and become, the top salesman worldwide. And I wasn't caught up in the very detailed things. I was big picture, looking at the things that I could control and the things that I was in charge of, and letting all the details for the people that I had hired.
I was also surprised to see that you invested with your father-in-law. Is that a good idea?
He's one of the best guys in this world, literally. You know, everybody always tells you, you know what, I know I'm investing and I know things can go wrong and I'm not going to blame you if things go wrong. I don't know that everybody really means that, but I knew he did. And so, yeah, I mean, would I do it again? I don't know, because it was very stressful on me when things looked like they were going to go south and he was going to lose everything and he was going through kidney failure. And, you know, I definitely took that weight on my shoulders to try to right that ship so that none of that happened. And fortunately, we were able to do that. But, you know, I've become great friends with him and he's a great example to me. And because of these investments, I think our relationship has grown. So, yeah, I would do it again. Would I suggest everybody do it? No, I wouldn't.
You say in your book that once you set goals, you need fuel to motivate you to achieve them. So, Nelson, what was your fuel?
Yeah, my fuel was my childhood and the doubts of all those people that looked down on me. And you know, the prospect of having a great family someday and, you know, raising some great kids that are going to make this world a better place. So I always looked at that fuel. I remember growing up with people looking down at you and not allowing their kids to play with you and, you know, talking horrible things about you. And I wanted to prove to all those people that you shouldn't judge somebody because of their circumstances. And I was willing to work hard. And when things got hard, I always thought about that and thought about, I'm not going to let those people who doubted me be proved right. I'm going to show them. And not only am I going to show them, I'm going to show them so spectacularly that they're going to learn a lesson never to judge somebody, you know, judge that book by their cover or their circumstances.
How do you overcome fear of failure?
You know what? Like I said, I don't have much fear in my life. You know, I don't think it really benefits us. Am I cautious in investments and decisions that I make because I know every decision has a consequence? Yes, but fear isn't real. Fear is only something that you make up in your mind. You know, and I think back to when I do get fearful. I mean, I don't want to sit here and say I never get fearful of circumstances I find myself in. But, you know, the one thing that I'm very fearful of is if I didn't do all those things, that I'd be forfeiting this life that I'm living today. So when I start having that fear, I start thinking like, you know, here's that fear. And is that going to stop me? You know, one of the other things I talk about in my book is the what if syndrome. I kind of spin that question because a lot of people say, what if it goes bad? Or what if that doesn't, you know, what if the economy crashes or all that? I like to ask that question differently. What if this thing goes better than planned? And what if, you know, this investment, you know, does the best that it can do? And then I start focusing on those things. And then I start working as hard as I can to make that what if come to fruition, as opposed to focusing on the negative things that could happen.
You wrote a lot in the book about your marriage. You said that when you were experiencing severe financial stress, your marriage almost ended. Nelson, what advice do you have for people in a similar situation who are taking their business stress home with them?
Yeah, you know what? You gotta hang it up at the door and not let it come into your home. I mean, that was one of the things that I unfortunately learned the hard way. And again, I didn't have the best example growing up on how to treat your wife and your partner. So, I mean, I had to overcome that as well. But as I said here today, you know what? I've been married 25 years and our relationship today is better than it's ever been. And it keeps getting better. And, you know, there's some fear for me too, because we were literally one or two arguments away from getting a divorce 15 years ago. And if I would have done that again, I would have forfeited all these great times. You know, I'm not saying that there's never a time that a marriage should end. But I think there's a lot of people out there that give up on relationships way too easily. And that's one of the things is chances are the problems that you're having in your relationship, you're going to have either those problems or different problems in the next relationship. Plus, if you get divorced and you have kids, you're going to have the problems in that relationship that you ended anyhow. So my advice to everybody is try harder and try to work it out. It's worth it. As I said here, I'm so thankful that me and my wife worked it out, and we're reaping the benefits of that. Our children are reaping the benefits of that. And, I think generations to come are going to reap the benefit of us sticking out a very, very hard situation.
You also wrote a lot about your kids in the book. When you're financially successful, how do you make sure your kids don't get so spoiled and overindulged that they lose the hunger to succeed that you had?
That's a good question. And I'm not sure that I'm actually fulfilling that. I think that's one of the hard things that I see that I'm probably failing at. You as a member of the Unlucky Sperm Club, you think when you're growing up, man, my family's never going to, need that. And when you're able to do things, you buy your kids the nicer car than you have to, and you live in a nice house, and you don't want your kids to work. You want them to go play sports and have fun because you worked your whole entire life. I mean, what I try to do with my kids is I try to teach life lessons, and I try to give them contrast and for them to understand how blessed they are. Now, I'm fortunate right now because my son is in Guatemala right now, helping the Guatemalan people. And he is being shown how drastically different his life is from people in Guatemala. And that I think is going to be a huge benefit to him. He's seeing that those people are living on, what he spends on a pair of sneakers. That's what they have to live on the entire month for a family of 7. And he as I talk to him, he is seeing that, and he has come to the point where he is so grateful for the life that he has lived to this point, and so grateful for what me and his mom have done for him, and the life that we've provided for him. So that would be my suggestion. If your children have a shot to go see how other people live, that's in direct contrast to how they were raised, that will definitely bode some huge dividends if you're able to put your children in those type of circumstances. And it doesn't have to be drastic to go to a different country for a few years, or maybe you take them to a soup kitchen, or you take them to a part of town where people are struggling more than you are, and you kind of show them what they are, and talk about the choices and the circumstances, and show them how blessed they are that way.
It's a strange thing to say, but sometimes I think that in some ways, having had a difficult youth can make you more equipped to deal with life's challenges than if everything had been handed to you on a silver platter as a kid. I mean, in your case, hardship made you hungry to succeed. It gave you ambition. Do you agree?
Absolutely, 100%. And again, I wouldn't trade my childhood, as hard as it was and as brutal as some of the times were. I wouldn't trade it, because it has made me who I am. It's made me appreciate every single day that I'm living the life that I'm living, that, I'm in these circumstances. And I think I wouldn't have as much gratitude. I wouldn't appreciate it as much if I had grown up, in middle class or upper class family. I think I would have been more likely to take it for granted. And because I was born in those circumstances, I never take the blessings in this life that I'm living for granted. I know what it's like on the other end.
There's a story in your book that I just loved. When you didn't get a real estate listing after making a listing presentation, you called the client and asked her what you could have done better. She was so impressed that she gave you an even bigger listing soon after that. What gave you the idea to do that, Nelson?
You know what? I have a growth mindset. I don't know that I was born with a growth mindset, but I eventually developed it through goals and personal development, and continuing to try to strive to become a better version of myself. And at this time of my life, in that story, we're going through the Great Recession, and life is bad. And I feel like everything is going to kind of go away and I'm going to lose everything. And I was humbled. And, I needed to figure out how to get more listings. And, the fact that I didn't get that one, apparently I didn't do something as good as I could have done. And so I was just humbled and asked the question so that I could learn and be prepared for the next listing. And I think that is a great lesson, because we all fail, we all struggle. There's always those times in our lives where things don't go as well as they could. But I think one of the great lessons is we need to learn from those and grow from those. And eventually, we'll be able to do better than we've done in the past if we're willing to humble ourselves and grow from the experiences that didn't work out as well as we would have liked them to.
Well, I thought that was just a great lesson. Nelson, you sold your businesses, retired from being a real estate agent, and started a company called igotsmarter. Can you tell us a little about it?
Yeah, igotsmarter is a goal achievement program, and it's helping people achieve their life's biggest goals. One of the greatest benefits in my life was setting that first goal of becoming the first person to graduate from college in my family. And I saw the power of goals. I saw how important setting a goal and working hard at accomplishing that goal, what a difference it could play in my life. And not only my life, but my children's lives. The great thing about goals is they're generational. They're helping us become better versions of ourselves. And when you become a better version of yourself, you're able to accomplish more things. And that's what igotsmarter is developed to do, is to help people achieve goals. And no matter if you feel like you've never accomplished a goal, or maybe you've never even stuck past your New Year's resolutions past January, or you feel like you are a pretty good goal achiever, this program is something that I've developed over the last 25 years of my life. I've always used goals, and I've pretty much owned every goal achievement program that has been out there. And I know what's worked for me and what hasn't worked. And I know what a difference it's made in my life. And when I was kind of figuring out what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, I saw how important goals were in my life and helping me live the life that I'm living. And I thought to myself, you know what, this is my legacy. This is why I was born under the circumstances that I was born under. This is why I was able to, have some success in my life, is so that I could show other people how to use goals and personal development in their own lives and live that version of their lives that's possible for them. And that's what I've put into igotsmarter, the entire program. I've developed it into an app so that people can use it easily. And yeah, it's changing people's lives. It's giving them all the tools, knowledge, and support that they finally need to achieve their life's biggest goals as well.
And how do people access that?
Yeah, it's igotsmarter.com. It's also available on the app stores, both Apple and Android, or you can go to nelsontressler.com and see a link there as well.
You wrote that gratitude is the one emotion that can change your life more quickly than any other emotion. Why?
Yeah, I think you can be grateful in all circumstances. Even when things go bad, you can be grateful for the lessons that you learned, for the type of person you had to become to overcome them. Or your life could be, something that somebody would literally kill to be living. But if you're not grateful for it, you're not going to be happy. And, the whole thing of life is to find joy and to be happy with it. And when you really cultivate the attitude of gratitude and you're happy in all things and in all circumstances, you live a happier life and you have more joy in your life. And I'm not here to have this Pollyanna, everything's great in the world. No, it's not. And I've gone through some hard things. I continue to go through struggles, but I've never found a circumstance where after I take a step back and look at it and find out why I'm grateful for it, that it hasn't made those circumstances better and more fulfilling. And I understand that, hey, because of this tough circumstance, I'm going to be a better person. Maybe I'm going to have more empathy for other people who are in those circumstances. But that would be the one thing. If you're not happy in your life, start studying gratitude, develop that attitude of gratitude in all things. And that one thing alone will bring so much more joy in your life.
Well, Nelson, I want to thank you for coming on our show and talking about your book and your philosophies and strategies for success. I hope our viewers will be motivated by the information you've shared with us. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. Great conversation. I've loved it.
Me too. Our guest has been author and life coach Nelson Tressler. My name is Harvey Brownstone. Thank you to our producer, Steve Silver. Thank you all for joining us. See you next time.
Remember to subscribe to the Harvey Brownstone Interviews YouTube channel. And be sure to check out more great interviews with Harvey Brownstone on harveybrownstoneInterviews.com.